Welcome to the Strategic Briefing. Put yourself in this scenario for a second. You wake up to the sound of blaring sirens, and suddenly, a massive explosion literally shakes your apartment building. And here's the catch. You're not in a war zone. You are safely inside the borders of a NATO member state. Well, on the night of May 29, 2026, that nightmare became a reality. A Russian military drone slammed right into a 10-story residential building in Galați, Romania. As security professionals, we need to look at this with completely clear eyes. This wasn't just some tragic accident. This was a critical failure of local deterrence. Today, we're diving into exactly how the war in Ukraine is physically spilling over NATO's borders.
We're going to treat this entire situation as a real-world case study in political risk management. Here's our roadmap. First, we'll unpack the Galați precedent. Second, we'll examine the hybrid warfare tactics at play. Third, we'll look at the tactical and fiscal dilemma. Fourth, we'll weigh Article 4 against Article 5. And finally, we'll break down Operation Eastern Sentry. Let's get right into it.
All right, Section 1, the Galați precedent, agorder breached.
Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand that this Galați strike wasn't just some sudden out-of-the-blue escalation. It was a very clear chronological buildup. Look at the timeline here. Back in September 2023, we were just finding drone debris in unpopulated Romanian marshlands. No big deal, right? But then, fast forward to September 2025, and a coordinated swarm of about 20 drones pushes deep into Poland. By April 2026, a drone strikes farm buildings near Galați. And then, the real turning point, May 2026, a direct hit on a residential block. What we're seeing is a deliberate shift from accidental drift to systematic, low-altitude border incursions.
And that brings us to the grim reality of that May 2026 strike. 2 civilians injured, 70 people evacuated from their homes. You know, for a long time, the calculus for these frontline NATO states was all about avoiding escalation. The unspoken strategy was essentially that it was politically safer to just let the occasional stray drone pass by, rather than shooting it down and risking a direct conflict. But here's the thing. That math completely falls apart the second civilians get hurt on NATO soil.
Moving on to Section 2, hybrid warfare tactics and how adversaries are testing the gray zone. Make no mistake, these are highly calculated hybrid warfare operations. We aren't just talking about Romania here. We're seeing massive probing efforts right across the alliance. Take Latvia, for example. In September 2024, a Russian drone literally flew all the way through Belarus just to crash in Latvia. We've seen Estonian airspace violated by Russian MiG-31 fighter jets. By sending these platforms over, Russia is actively testing our radar shadows and response times. They are pushing the envelope right up to the very edge of open conflict. And of course, they flank this physical probing with massive disinformation campaigns, claiming the drones are Ukrainian false flags or mocking the West for so-called drone hysteria. It's textbook psychological warfare.
Which leads us straight into Section 3, the tactical and fiscal dilemma, or simply put, the sheer cost of defense.
So, you might be wondering, why don't we just shoot them all down the second they cross the border? Well, look at this extreme fiscal asymmetry. On one side, you've got NATO's response, state-of-the-art F-16s or Eurofighters firing air-to-air missiles that cost millions of dollars a pop. On the other side, the threat. Mass-produced Iranian-designed Geran-2 drones that cost, maybe 10 grand each? From a purely risk management perspective, scrambling a multi-million-dollar fighter jet to intercept a cheap one-way suicide drone is completely unsustainable over the long run. And trust me, Russia knows this cost-benefit ratio inside and out, and they're intentionally using it to bleed our defense resources dry.
But it's not just about the money. It's about absolute tactical and legal nightmares on the ground. Take Romanian Law 73/2025. Yes, it gives the military the legal authority to intercept drones, but it strictly prioritizes civilian safety above all else. Put yourself in the cockpit for a second. You're an F-16 pilot, you've got a drone locked in your sights, but you're flying right over downtown Galați. If you blow that drone out of the sky, you are raining flaming debris and unexploded ordnance onto a densely populated city. In a peacetime legal framework, the risk of collateral damage is just unacceptably high, and that is exactly the tactical trap being exploited here.
All right, let's jump to Section 4, Article 4 versus Article 5, the political maneuvering room.
So, when that massive drone swarm hit Poland in 2025, or when Estonia's airspace was breached, those nations made a very deliberate, calculated political choice. They invoked Article 4, not Article 5. Now, why does that matter? While Article 4 triggers urgent emergency consultations among allies, it flashes a giant warning sign that security is threatened. Article 5, on the other hand, is the ultimate collective defense principle. An attack on one is an attack on all. It basically means war. By strategically choosing Article 4, these frontline states are actively managing their political risk. They're sounding the alarm, absolutely, but they're purposely leaving themselves enough political maneuvering room to avoid triggering World War III with a nuclear-armed Russia.
But the patience was definitely wearing thin across the board. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk made it perfectly clear after that 2025 drone swarm, stating, "The alliance has decided that Russia's provocation cannot go unanswered." That quote right there, that was the watershed moment. The old paradigm of just sitting back and relying on isolated national responses was officially over. NATO leadership realized that passive monitoring just wasn't cutting it anymore. They needed a structural collective response.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Operation Eastern Sentry, NATO's Shield.
Launched on September 12, 2025, Operation Eastern Sentry completely flipped the script on airspace defense. Before this, if a drone flew into Romania, well, that was Romania's problem to solve. Not anymore. This operation replaces those ad hoc responses with a unified collective air defense framework stretching across the entire eastern flank, from the Baltics all the way down to the Black Sea, all coordinated centrally from NATO's Combined Air Operations Center in Spain.
Just look at this breakdown. This is what collective defense actually looks like in practice. You've got German Eurofighters integrating into Baltic air policing, French Rafales securing the Polish-Ukrainian border, British Typhoons backing up Romanian radar stations, Denmark is throwing in F-16s and naval frigates, and Italy is deploying advanced F-35 stealth fighters alongside surface-to-air missile systems. It is an absolutely unprecedented pooling of international military hardware, all working together to track and deter these incoming threats. It's burden sharing in its purest form.
But remember that fiscal dilemma we talked about? Throwing expensive fighter jets at cheap drones simply isn't sustainable. So NATO laid out a three-step strategic roadmap. Step 1 is what we just saw, deploying those integrated air patrols immediately. Step 2 is solving the cost issue through pure innovation. Recently, at the Capu Media Range in Romania, NATO tested over 200 new counter-drone systems. They're bringing in AI-powered tech, like the US Merup system and the Sky Dome laser, which can safely neutralize drones at a fraction of the cost, without causing massive ground damage.
And then there's Step 3, scaling it up politically and physically. Check this out. The European Union is pushing forward with the European Drone Wall Initiative, backed heavily by the European Parliament. We're talking about a 3 to 7 billion euro project designed to build a multi-layered, interoperable drone defense network across the continent, drawing directly from the battlefield lessons learned in Ukraine. The ultimate goal? Linking sensors, jammers, and interceptors into one massive, automated shield.
But I want to leave you with a really tough question as we wrap up this explainer. Operation Eastern Sentry and the European Drone Wall are incredibly impressive defenses, absolutely. But are high-tech drone shields enough to permanently secure NATO's gray zone? I mean, think about it. If an adversary knows that you are only ever going to act defensively, that your top priority is always going to be avoiding escalation, will passive technological deterrence really be enough to outlast their relentless probing? It's a massive risk management dilemma, and it's one that will likely keep European leaders awake at night for years to come. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and definitely keep your eyes on the eastern flank.